how did you manage to get a slot in the renowned Metropolis?
Well, that was a long process. I started off there working night reception, which is at the time what everyone who wanted to get into that studio did. That was about 5 years ago. And I slowly got to know all the people there. You learn a lot, even just doing night reception. You learn a lot from the guys. They'll come and chat to you. They'll give you little things. Every now and again, they'll invite you down into the studio to give them a hand, either setting up or packing down. I did that for a while, and then eventually Crispin Murray, who's the mastering technician, he asked if I wanted to be his assistant, and I said yes, because I was willing to do anything to get off night reception. And I ended up working up in mastering, setting up a lot of the rooms, working out how to set up tape machines, installing a lot of the new gear, testing a lot of the new gear that they'd get, setting up blind tests for people, installing new bits and bobs, doing software changes for them, just keeping the whole place running and ticking over, not actually doing any mastering, but being in the room while the likes of, Tim Young, Ian Cooper, Miles Show, all these guys were working. You can't not learn. And these guys have got some of the best ears in the business. They've been doing it for 20, 30 years now. And I learned a heck of a lot from those guys.
So you talk about new gear. I would have thought a big studio like that would kind of have its set rack, it'll all be wired, and that's what the studio is. You still have new stuff coming through?
Absolutely. Metropolis is one of those places where things don't stand still. Their goal is to make the best recordings, the best masters that they can. So someone like, from my knowledge is the mastering department more than the studios. They were told about recently, for example, a new clock which manufacturer sent over, and we tested it out. We compared it with the Prism clocks that we were using previously. We did blind tests on it. There was a universal agreement that it made a difference. Question of whether it made it better was argued over for a while. So we ended up setting it up so that people could use either that clock or the Prism, depending on which they wanted. And the same goes for everything else. If a manufacturer develops a new compressor, Metropolis will be one of the first places to get hold of it. And they might not always buy it, but they want to know, what does it do compared to the compressors they've already got? What does it not do? And why might they want to use it? If they find a new compressor that maybe does a cleaner boost, then they're going to want it because they want to get clean recordings all the way through.
And why do you are you personally drawn to being a mix engineer over a mastering engineer? Someone would think that having the chance to be next to guys like you mentioned in mastering, that would sort of maybe push you in that direction. Is there a particular reason why you prefer doing mix over master, or do you?
No, I do. I definitely prefer mixing to mastering. One of the things I learnt from working with those guys was actually that I preferred mixing, and that I'm better at it than I am at mastering, and they're a lot better at mastering than I am ever going to be, I think. And my mixing really improved. One of the things I really learned from those guys was what a mastering engineer is looking for in a mix. So you get mixes come in, and you'll be in the room, and you'll hear their responses to those mixes, and it'll be like things like, this guy, and the guy's pushed the bass too hard, or he's put too much two-bus compression across the mix, and the mixes were always coming in too loud. So I've learned, a mastering engineer doesn't really want much in the way of 2-bus compression because he's going to put 2-bus compression on it. So leave that to him. He'll be a bit happier. Don't overcook the bass, don't rip the tops too much. You get a really good sense of what a good mix should sound like. And with that, you can then go back to your mix room and apply that knowledge, knowing that that's your goal. You're trying to get a mix that sounds like the mixes that made the mastering engineers happy.
Valuable.
Yeah.
Cool. And so now you've moved on from that now, and you're still working for Music Tech, still writing for Music Tech. But I believe you also do private mix sessions as well.
Yeah, I do private mix sessions from home. I've got a fairly decent setup now. A few things I still need to buy, but we've discussed that. I've got what I need. The threshold isn't really the equipment, it's my skills as a mixing engineer. And I've been working on quite a few different things, from folk artists to rock artists, and most recently I've been doing a hip-hop mix.
And how do you find the contrast doing a hip-hop mix as opposed to doing rock? I would assume it's fairly different in the way of sub and all the rest of it. Yeah,
you approach it in different ways. I've got a subwoofer here in the room, so I engaged that for the hip-hop mix. And I listen to a lot of music. I listen to a lot of music from different genres. There's no one genre that I would say is my preferred listening. So I just went, I spoke with the guy whose track it was. I asked him what kind of artists he was into. We took a list of stuff, went on Spotify, spent a good half a day just listening to tracks, just getting a feel for what he was listening to. Some of it I knew already, a lot of it I didn't. And then got stuck into the mix, having had prepared my ears for that style of music. And that's something I like to do with a lot of artists. What I find is I learn a lot about music from the artists. I learn a lot of new bands that I'd not heard of, a lot of new singers, a lot of new acts, just by questioning people, finding out what their preferred choices are. And what I find is a lot of the artists I like working with the most are those who give me new things to listen to. If someone turns up and they say, "Oh, I really love a band that I know really well," I tend to get a bit bored on the session quite quickly. And if someone turns up and says, "Oh, I'm really into some really obscure act," I go and listen to that. I might end up with a new favourite artist, and that's always fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Excellent. What are the most common mistakes that you receive when you get a project, a recording from somebody else? It's been tracked by somebody else. What are the common mistakes that really piss you off?
That's a really good question. Bad edits are one. So you'll find that if a track's been edited, say a vocal track, and they've comped it from multiple takes, very, very frequently I'll find an edit which is in the middle of a word, or just they've cut off the very end, or they've cut off the very beginning transient, and that's going to clip. You're going to get a pop from that. And if you're lucky, you can fix the edit, and they've left the material there for you to, drag the file out a little bit. If you're unlucky, they've bounced it and given you a stem, and you're stuck with a clip, and then there are tools. Cedar makes some really good tools for declicking things, but I hate doing it. I'd much rather, if people could just sort out their edits better, that would be the main cause of problems for me.
Zoom in.
Zoom in and don't clip the transient. Don't, cut at 0 points. Don't cut in the middle of a wave. But it's so common. And from working at Metropolis, you'd find clicks that will have gone all the way through to mastering, going into things, and the guys there have some amazing tools for getting rid of them, but it should never get that far. Other common problems I find are stereo channels that are just mono, really. That's a real bugbear of mine, and I find it always comes from Logic users who don't know quite how Logic works, and everything comes out as stereo unless you set it up to go out as mono. So,
I guess technically that's not going to affect the final output. It's just annoying for you.
It's just annoying that I've downloaded twice as much material than I needed to, and it's taken me twice as long to get the material. Yeah, it doesn't impact the mix. I just end up deleting, sending it to mono anyway.
Cool. Okay. And if someone's interested in learning more about you or getting in touch with you as far as your services are concerned, whereabouts on the intertubes do you hang out?
I'm pretty active on Twitter, so you'll find me at Mike Hillier, just one word. And then I've got my website, which is www.mikehillier.me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming and answering some questions for us.
No problem. I hope you've enjoyed it.